Welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. We got the NIA boys here, fresh and direct from the year 2022. Welcome, boys, and Happy New Year to everyone listening. Boys, how's the break been? We've been staying in touch, but everyone's been getting fat and getting smashed, it sounds like. So how's it been?
Dude, Vancouver is pretty quiet, man. We're back on lockdown, basically, like semi.
Oh, serious?
Like early, no, like lockdown, but shut down the bars, clubs, and Omicron fears, man. I don't know where you guys are like. Yeah. I don't know what's going on, but up here we've decided that it's still, something
it's still a thing.
Fair enough to be taken seriously.
Yeah, Jack. What about you, mate? How's it going down there?
All good. Can't complain. Nice little holiday season. Back at it.
2022. And as you can tell for people watching, I'm still in the London in Europe because I've got the handheld here. I've got my hat on.
You're in the London?
The London, yeah, like the Sudan, but the London. And so let's let people know what we're talking about. We've got a packed agenda today. We're going to be talking about trading the Metagame, which is an interesting take on crypto and gaming. We're going to talk about Bored Ape Yacht Club, where you probably heard about it the first time on this pod. If you've been an old school listener, Jack talked about that in episode 2 or 3, and it recently just flipped Punks, which is the original, that was always the most expensive NFT. And we're going to talk about that. We're also going to be talking about how Jack is assessing his risk on the risk curve and what he's going to be doing with some of that money and how he's thinking about all of that. We're also going to talk about PFPs, profile pictures. You've seen a lot of these NFTs. The most popular kind of NFT are these profile pictures. Picture for proof is another definition of it. I don't know. We can talk about what that actually means. Jack's got a take on why he thinks that's the breakout medium. And then we're going to get on to worst predictions. It's the new year, so everyone's talking about their crystal ball predictions. And a lot of those are going to be terrible. So we're going to break down a few of the worst ones at the end. So let's get straight into it, boys. Let's talk about trading the Metagame. I know our boy Cobie wrote a post on his Substack, and so I think Jack was going to tee this one up. What was he talking about? Of it?
Well, Jack, why don't you first tell us who Cobie is for the listeners, the two listeners that don't know?
That's true. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been maybe following him for a year or so, but he's OG crypto trader, I think involved in maybe in Ethereum very early on. So did well for himself, has been a prolific and profitable trader for some time, has a great reputation for, making good calls. And he has I think a daily show called Up Only. So
incredible name, absolutely incredible
budget, spend that over there. But he's a funny dude, smart guy, and just started writing these long form posts on Substack. And this is one of them that we're going to be talking about. But there's actually another one where he talked about a few of the things that we've discussed in the previous episode, just about attention really being the only asset to pay attention to in crypto, which may even be a better precursor to what we're about to talk about. I can't remember in what order he wrote these posts, but I think someone is so embedded in Twitter and crypto culture, kind of sees it from you sort of see it from the seed stage of the narrative. And I think that's kind of where the whole space is going in terms of like people making correct predictions. Like these things start as a couple influential people talking about them on Twitter that like it's the Wall Street bets phenomenon, just in a different financial market, right? But the Metagame that he refers to is basically like, there's these waves of narrative in crypto. So there's, DeFi summer was 2020 maybe, and then going into the end of 2020, there's NFTs, and it's NFT summer this year. Now it's crypto gaming. And L1s, it's like this chain can perform the same things that Ethereum can, but it's way less fees, way faster. Maybe it's more centralized, whatever else.
L1 being level 1? Is that the reference?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the general point he's making is like people who, and a lot of these successful traders come from like League of Legends or competitive, like what do they call it? MMO RPG, massively multiplayer.
Yeah.
massively multiplayer online role-playing games. And they're kind of looking at the whole universe and allocating time, attention, energy to the thing where the place where attention is flowing. And because a lot of this stuff is like pre-product in a lot of cases, like it's either pre-product or it's really early stage, or it's like heavily reliant on a lot of things happening in the future that have not yet happened, as all like investment, like high risk investment class assets are, like bets on a story. It's a great Morgan Housel quote. I'm going to mess it up, but the essence of it is every valuation is a story from today multiplied by a story about tomorrow.
That's a great quote. Yeah.
It's a brilliant way to think about it. And crypto is obviously that on steroids because of the lower barrier to entry and like the liquidity in these markets. But yeah, the idea that to be a successful trader at the highest level, you have to understand like where this attention is shifting, and there's always some like outsized return or some outsized amount of capital or attention being directed at like a sliver of the ecosystem, or one like narrative starts to take hold. And if you're able to spot that narrative take hold before everybody's talking about that narrative, in the same way that like some of the NFT stuff we talked about last year in April, May, the real like crypto insiders had been buying CryptoPunks 6 months before that. So that narrative has slowly reached the mainstream, and now probably the returns in the NFT market are leveling off in some like relative to where they were a year ago. And maybe crypto gaming is now this thing that's like everyone's talking about, oh, if we're able to better incentive or
play to earn, basically, right?
Yeah,
like
build better gaming models,
economic
better
models.
incentives. Exactly. Yeah. That's like, that narrative has taken enough of a footing in the last few months that now capital is like being allocated.
What's funny is actually he went trending yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw that. He basically said something to that effect, like why crypto and gaming are kind of inevitable. Again, I'm probably chopping this up because I don't have the full memory there, but he was hit up by a lot of the gaming community, and then he literally tweeted Cobie was trending, and he's like, good night, like this is enough for me. But Jack, I think that was a perfect overview that you hit. I wanted to tease out actually a little of those each of those narratives that you mentioned, and like kind of talk about the micro of it to make to really bring the essay to life and nail the story. But Cobie kind of mentioned one of the first the meta stories, or the meta idea that he traded was back in, I think, 2012, 2013, when he first got into Bitcoin trading. He knew that these kind of altcoins, the meta game was which coin gets listed onto some big exchange, right? Exchange, that was the meta game, right? And he talked about how like you basically were like surfing to see which one would get listed. And like you, while on the micro level, you're picking and choosing individual coins, what you're really doing, the game is who is getting listed on the big exchange, right? So like if you were to apply that same framework to kind of the names you've mentioned, like DeFi Summer or the Level 1 or the NFTs, is like, yeah, you're buying, like Jack, you're out there buying Bored Apes, but you, without even realizing it, what you're really doing is you clearly picked up, like when you told us about Bored Apes in April and May, you had clearly picked up on like, hey, these cartoon characters that are being sold as NFTs, this whole thing is clearly something, right?
Sorry, I was definitely a level down from a Cobie who's like sitting above that, right? Viewing
but you
how
had
attention...
identified that in another way, right? Like you hadn't formulated maybe with like formally, but like you clearly were thinking somewhere in that realm. You, like you said, you're not catching the 50,000 foot like he did, but like your thinking led you in a similar direction. But to your point, is like there are people picking these up day one, right? And like they knew the narrative because they knew 6 months ago that CryptoPunks were like, oh wow, the volume, the movement's kind of suggesting that this is a space. Is that direction correct?
Yeah. I think it's like it's a macro view, but where it differs from like a traditional market is like the macro takes traditionally the macro thesis takes a long time to play out, right? If you're talking about commodities or like trade law and like geopolitics, those like cycles are way slower. But macro trends in crypto can really shift in like ridiculous amounts of time because of the social nature of it, because of the, you know, the speed at which capital moves, like the global market, the no opening hours, all of those layers of things that make crypto as nutty as it is like the macro can change way faster than, you know, a more traditional or more regulated financial market.
I just want to add one more. To kind of add to your point, was he did mention, which one I think would be very salient for any listener that isn't fully capturing what we're thinking about here, is when Elon started tweeting about Doge in about summer of 2020. He basically said, okay, investing in Doge is kind of the micro play, but the meta game is now, what are the dog coins? What are the dog? Yeah, right. He's like, what are the dog coins you can? And true, right? He nailed. I mean, it was such a perfect frame. If you invested in Shibu, you'd be crushing it right now. It's like, what are the adjacent? What is the game that's being played now? All this attention is now being putting on a coin, the original meme coin of crypto that is represented by a dog. Okay, where does that suggest? That means all these other dog coins are gonna blow up.
Yeah, and I like you have to have such a objective view because you know, anybody that comes from traditional finance, like I imagine Fiat Fan is looking at a Shiba Inu, finds it difficult to allocate to that, right? But these people, I guess, have been in that ecosystem long enough to like they've made a profit trading on narratives on things that didn't play out, right? Like it's a very different thing than like. I think we're even seeing that phenomenon with traditional companies now as like vaporware in traditional companies. I'm sure you could roll off a list of those, Trung, but the Nikolas of the world and all of the Nikolai, I don't even know the name of it. But a lot of companies that raise huge amounts of money that don't have a product.
The meta narrative is electric, right? Like that's why there are so many companies like Lucid and Rivian. And that would be the meta game, is like, okay, Tesla's established a field that this disruption is worth $1 trillion. So that's a joke. Slap EV on it and we'll go public and we'll be a $10 billion company with zero revenue. That's the meta. That's the meta game right there.
Yeah, and those people, like there's two people playing that, right? There's the investors and the speculators, and then there's the people that are like, let's start an EV company. Like they're playing the meta game too. And I think that crypto has just shortened those cycles in the same way that like all the people that were writing threads about productivity last year are now like Web3 in the bio, right? It's like that's the meta game of attention right now. It's you go where the attention is. And I think, it's just it's fascinating to watch, like, and very hard to distinguish between like who is, you know, who has skin in the game or who is like genuinely like working to understand these topics or build it into something versus like surfing the narrative. And I think we're like, the internet, crypto, social, all of those layers together, just it makes everything way more like a video game. Like even a remote job now is a video game.
Bilal, I think I saw you pull the mic up, but let me drop one point. It's about Elon. He was just saying that, and I'll just bookend it with the Doge thing. He said when Elon went on SNL, if you're looking at that as the meta narrative, he's like, that is like full saturation and peak. Like that was what he's saying, right? That was comparable to right before the Great Depression. Joseph Kennedy, JFK's father, a very well-known Wall Street individual, he famously said, is like when the shoe shine boy was giving you stock tips, you knew it's the top. Is like similar to Doge for Doge. Elon going to SNL is like, if anybody had not known about Doge up to that point, is like now it's fully saturated. This meta story is kind of reached this conclusion, and that's basically what happened, right?
So the way I was thinking about it there is, as you guys were talking about layer one summer, DeFi summer, NFT summer, Solana summer, etc. Those are all those kind of like mini narratives that proliferate, and people jump in on those storylines, and they, you know, it hypes them up even more. And now we're seeing a new wave of that. And personally, the way I've kind of always played that for myself is I really need to separate, like, what is this being driven by? And there's normally two things. It's either hype. I mean, it's always hype, but primarily by hype. So obviously a meme coin like Shiba Inu is very different to the fundamentals of a Bitcoin or Ethereum, or the fundamentals of macro trends in early stage technology investing in AI and machine learning, etc. So that is one thing. And I quickly realized anytime it was just strictly momentum like that, I'm not great at playing that, because I can't hold any of that long term. I just don't believe in it long enough. And in my head, I'm like, this is stupid. Why am I even doing this? And the other part is this being driven by like fundamentals? Is there a reason people start talking about Polygon when we mentioned Polygon ages ago on this podcast as well? We talked about Solana, and again, it's always partly both. There's always a bit of hype. There's a meme nature to it. But also sometimes just because Solana has lots of people developing on it, and there's a bunch of developers that are switching and saying, actually, I'm going to develop on this platform versus others. And then there's the straight up Shiba Inu, which is let's catch and be the next Dogecoin. So as always, I'm not like against any of these things, as long as you know kind of what you're doing. But it's interesting to kind of like place those things in my head anyway, like what's driving it deep down. Because right now, like a lot of the gaming stuff, we've talked about this before, the play to earn games are kind of not the best, right? Like they're kind of boring. Most of the time, as soon as you take the money out of that, then most people aren't going to be playing Axie Infinity, it sounds like. So, but there are going to be next generations of this. And the interesting thing, when I read Cobie's tweet storm on this as well, he's been talking about gaming for a little while. And I think this stems from earlier, like last year, when the Discord CEO went on Twitter and it talked about NFTs or something coming to Discord. And a lot of the gaming community rebelled against it, right?
Our boy Packy wrote that piece, and he replied with the eyes suggesting like, oh, looks like NFT innovations are coming. And then they had the whole blow up.
And then they had to back up because people were getting annoyed with them. And so I've just got one of Cobie's tweets. He's at Cobie. He said, the outrage from gamers over the inclusion of NFTs is an astronomical, unwitting vote against self-interest. If gaming companies are able to build more sustainable revenue models without paywall DLC, NFTs can improve player experience, even if you opt out of buying them for yourself. And the only reason I want to bring that up is because it's kind of linked to what we're talking about here. And his point here is this world is developing, and like gaming is just one microcosm of this. DeFi is another version of this. Like there's traditional people there, and you come in, you say, here's an alternative. And the people who are currently playing that game will say, what the hell are you doing? We've already got something that works that we love, and stay out of our space. And gaming is an interesting example because a lot of gamers are quite tech savvy, obviously. But it's something that is so deeply rooted in, like play for obvious reasons, and like that kind of passion you get from playing games and the communities is different to, a banker who is like just protecting their wallet. So I think we're going to see this in multiple fields, and it's another trend that will continue to kind of play out. So
Bilal, I have to give you credit, dude. Thank you for sharing that, but I think you missed the biggest point. And I think this is my takeaway. So you and I have both been listening to Jack do his thing. Only you have actually gone and took the initiative to follow up on it. The Toad's summer, dude.
Toad's back in the game. Yeah.
After Jack mentions it, you go out and do it. Again, not investment advice. We cannot stress this enough. I've done zero. I have, and then DeFi. You got caught a little bit of DeFi bug. You go out and test it. Like you were legit in the weeds, like trying these things out, right? And I have to respect that.
And I'll be honest, on NFTs, I'm really interested in them. But I clearly don't have as much conviction in NFTs as I do other things. That's why I have 10 times more invested in skin in the game and the other worlds. But honestly, for me, I don't know if it's just my Pakistani background, but as soon as someone pays me interest, I'm just like, I'm all in. I'm like 6%. Okay. 28%, 973 million %. All right.
Wait, you're going to put my money to work? And then I'm going to get the principal back? Explain this to me. Hold on a second.
Exactly.
Wait, hold on. Okay, my last thought I want to add to all of this, I think we can probably put an end to this thing unless Jack had thought was, I sent that tweet in the Telegram, my DM I got in the Telegram chat, and I think it nails it perfectly to Jack's point. Somebody messaged me with some shitcoin saying, hey, looks like you have received a reply from Elon. If you can get Elon to reply, retweet, or engage with, I guess fave is the only other option, with a tweet mentioning our coin, we'll give you $50,000. Now, hold on a second.
Incredible.
Jack, you're the attention guy. Elon Musk engagement is worth a lot more than $50,000.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you can get Elon Musk to reply to a tweet, why don't you start your own shitcoin?
Yeah, exactly, bro. Why am I not starting my own like Tesla fanboy coin? Like, get out of here. Own all the economics of it.
We got to do this on another episode, but like spam, scams, and like the creativity behind some of this stuff now, because it's so like easy to make life-changing amount of money in 24 hours and disappear forever. Like the sophistication that's coming to to that side of it is really wild.
Well, I think your point about how much faster these cycles happen, right? Because you did mention earlier about like geopolitical super cycles. So like when I moved to Vietnam after graduating in 2008, without knowing it was essentially playing a metagame. I was playing all the world's investors. Yeah, all the investors are putting money into emerging markets. That was the metagame, right?
Yeah.
It's like the rise of China and then what's going to happen. So my thinking was I was going to actually move to Shanghai. I was like a lot of people like, oh, we got to go to China, right? 2008, China's rising, get in on the ground floor. Turns out I don't speak Mandarin. I speak really bad Vietnamese. So I'm like, I'll just move to Vietnam, right? But it was the same logic. It's like, what people don't know is like 2008, 2009, outside of China, Vietnam was getting the most foreign direct investment in the world. The reason being is like, China is obviously a manufacturing hub, but if you're a large, global manufacturer, the thinking that you had to have was China plus one. So if you Google China plus one, it's a very well-known concept. The idea being, okay, you use China, but you have to have a backup. So the plus ones became Vietnam, Indonesia, Bangladesh. Yeah, exactly. So like, all these big manufacturers had the China plus one strategy. So I'll give you an example. And a lot of it's playing out now because of the tensions between America and China, where like Apple's moved like a lot of their AirPod production to Vietnam. Samsung ages ago moved their smartphone production to Vietnam. Intel has a fabrication plant in Vietnam. So the China plus one thing, that was a metagame that I didn't even think about that I was playing. I thought I would get rich by being a Westerner in Vietnam. It did not happen. So just to be clear, the metagame did not play out for me. But to Jack's original point, this was my final thought on it, was that whole thing was a 20-year cycle, right? It's like, China joining the World Trade Organization happened in 2001, right? Deng Xiaoping opening China to the West happened in 1980. So like me moving to Vietnam was part of this metagame that had been in play for 30 years. And whereas in crypto, like you said, it can happen overnight. An Elon Musk tweet can completely shift the narrative, right? And it's so insane. It's almost unfathomable.
Yeah, and those things are speeding up the cycles of physical, like meta game playing as well. I don't know if you saw that stat from, I think it was the New York Times published it, but it was like state in and out state immigration. Have you seen that? In and out?
Oh no, where they're going, like where they're heading.
So like people leaving New York and California, like in droves, and then Texas, Florida, basically red states that are like easier on COVID restrictions and tax and all those
like
things.
Tier 2 cities. Basically, right? Because
Tennessee, bro,
more remotely.
Tennessee tier 2, tier 2. Would you call it? Closer to tier 1 now.
Nashville's a tier 3, becoming a tier 2, I think.
Okay, I think this is a perfect segue. Bilal, what's the next thing we wanted to talk about?
Great segue. So we got Bored Apes flipping punks. All right. So this is in the last week or so. We saw Bored Ape Yacht Club, which you heard about here first, I'm sure, at 0.2 or 0.3 ETH. There was the original price that I think we talked about it, a few $100s. Now the floor price is 73.5 ETH. I just checked
okay, can we explain the flippening? Why is the floor price the flippening metric here for the listeners for the one or two listeners that aren't total degens on this podcast?
So the 10,000 avatar, the restricted supply avatar project was made popular by a collection called CryptoPunks, came out in 2017. They're actually given away for free. So you could claim them for free. And the market really started heating up late 2020, early 2021, and they summer of last year they got to like 140, 150 ETH floor price. The CryptoPunks, Gary V's jumping in there. Like there was a huge surge of attention in that direction. So the floor price, which means essentially the cheapest entry point into the collection, it was the comparable to a Bored Ape yacht club. So that was kind of the metric that a lot of the members of that community were measuring against for how popular the collection is, like what culture deems to be the more significant collection, essentially. So I think at the high end, CryptoPunks are still 10, 20, 30x off the highest Bored Ape sale at the high end, but actually it may not be true as of yesterday. So I might be wrong on that one, but a couple multiples higher. And that's been like the Twitter narrative, like when flippening, like Bored Apes becoming the premium or the untouchable NFT collection relative to like the OG CryptoPunks. And there were other collectible projects came before that. I think the 10,000 avatar project is the most comparable,
And just to put that in perspective, people don't know, that's a minimum price now. If you go on OpenSea today and try to buy one of these, in dollar terms, that's more than $250,000 as a minimum price is currently, the market price for these things. And in the last few weeks, we've seen everyone from Eminem, Dave Chappelle, Britney Spears, and our favorite John Terry. Yeah,
wait, the
John Terry, the football player, which is a funny one.
He's got a mutant, Bilal, so he's like on the different tier, but still.
He's on
That's a tier 2 city, right?
Yeah.
The mutant's a tier 2 city.
He's getting the Nashville of Bored Apes. But I guess, and if people are interested in this topic, obviously go back and listen to, if you're new to the show, we talked about this early on, episode 3, but also we've done an episode on NFTs in 2030, which was kind of trying to extrapolate and say what is the point of NFTs, what is this whole world going to look like, and we tried to explain or understand like what's going on there. Trung mentioned flippening. That phrase is used in all sorts of contexts. People have talked about the flippening of Ethereum to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the number one in terms of market cap, and will it ever be that Ethereum flips it, and so on and so forth. You can do that forever. But the point here is, Jack, we're going to talk to you about your situation because you bought these a long time ago. You shared it on the pod. You've obviously been a massive supporter of it. But yeah, just kind of where are you now with all of this? Because it's the new year and it's probably worth a discussion around.
Sober, massive supporter with all of his biases put to the side, an objective view. No, legitimately, like we're talking like we're talking about tiers. There's tiers of massive supporters, right? I think Jack's probably like a more like level-headed supporter.
Well,
of the
this
project.
is a tweet that I think you'd shared or someone had shared in the group chat, and it said, it's from Gainsey. It said, if you don't own a house, but you own a JPEG of a monkey, perhaps sell the monkey JPEG and purchase a house, which I think is quite a fair thing to bring up. So yeah, over to you.
Yeah.
Where's your head at with all this?
So, Trung, I appreciate the analysis. I try to be that way. Like the idea of spotting the trend rather than like being personally invested or connected to it, because how I see people experience their like relationship with the thing is not the thing that I experience. I was like watching people do that and be like, oh, this might become a thing. This is a trend, right? And full transparency, I have divested a reasonable portion of my Bored Ape position.
You are out.
I'm not out. A good portion of it. Like I still have exposure to it, but I sold some, and for that reason, brought up insightfully in the Gainsey tweet there. We've been seeing over the last like 2 or 3 weeks, there are people who someone ran the data, and again, not perfect because you don't know everyone's situation, but 60 to 70% of holders have one ape in a wallet with less than 5 Ethereum, or like half of them have less than 1 Ethereum. So the idea that's like profound to me is like, this is I'll be careful with the words I use here. I think I think the relative upside from this point is capped relative to the lifestyle upgrade that game could afford me now.
Right.
Yeah.
So not saying this for any with any desire that there is a negative price impact to,
because you're still in the game. You're still
in there. I'm still in there, and I think there's a couple experiences I had over the last few months. Going to the NFT conference in New York, we talked about that.
I think about it, yeah.
Like the relative value you can provide, like the value you can provide relative to the cost of the asset. If you make the conversation about utility, I think you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I believe personally more in the approach of a CryptoPunk project from that perspective, where there is no promise of, we're going to make a game, we're going to get 10,000 celebrities involved, we're going to build a club, because we talked about this, like $400,000 or $250,000, like a membership club that costs that much, they exist, and they're getting you a lot more than a warehouse party in Brooklyn, right? And I know it's early days. Let's not, like, I don't want to.
It's not Davos. It's like if you, you know what I mean? Like if you have a $250,000 membership, you're basically going to Davos with the world's leaders, and not again early days. That could be Davos in 10 years. To be honest.
I think the other thing I think is like there is some. I think this is really interesting from the perspective of like celebrities joining it, because I think there's risk. I think like attaching yourself to something so like intertwining your identity so like inseparably from this thing that you don't necessarily control is a risky move in a lot of ways. I think a lot of those celebrity announcements or purchases have been orchestrated. This is not like, this is not Eminem like logging onto his MacBook and be like, oh, let me check this out.
He's not in his MetaMask wallet writing his seed phrase down.
No,
well, talk about the Post Malone one. It wasn't.
It's a sponsorship, right? In the same way that like, Michael Jordan doing an Avis commercial in the 80s or whatever is like, he's not doing it because he loves Avis. He's doing it because like he's getting the bag, right? Which respect, that's how it works. I think what's fascinating about this market, because it's so early, is, imagine the parallel to like a CNBC, maybe like where there is maybe less understanding of what people are required to divulge as their like relative to the message that they're sending. Does that make sense? Like, Trung, if you go on CNBC to talk about asset X, I don't know if you have to disclose whether you hold a massive position in that asset or not. Do you?
No, they actually, shockingly, there were no disclosure requirements.
They don't even make
that's the world we're in, I think. That's the world we're in.
No, dude. And also, what's shocking is, I mean, this won't be shocking anybody that understands cable TV. They're like, you have to pick a side and like send us your bullet points for the arguments. I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like,
that's hilarious.
I mean, and the whole other side of this argument is like, simulation's broken. This shit's going to $10 million a monkey, right? Like that's like, there's a whole nother side to this where you just take the complete, like, the most entertaining outcome is the most likely, and it just runs forever because it's so nonsensical. But my personal decision is like, okay, I think on the best trade, I'm up 17,000%. Like, imagine waking up and that's like at zero. I wouldn't be able to look in my family's faces ever again.
Regret minimization, that mate. You got
exactly.
Exactly. I think it's a fair thing to bring up, because I think really that to me it's more about like just knowing your situation a little bit without knowing obviously the details. If it's really about risk and managing risk, right? And like, not that you're putting a massive spreadsheet together necessarily and creating a curve and being like, where am I on this curve? But you're just looking at it and thinking, I've got a hell of a lot of JPEGs right now, and I don't have a house, and I have a family to look after. And that's the kind of what we've always talked about for everyone, is like, you need to do what you need to do, right? There's no shame in that. So
yeah, you know what?
Is this the rotation, Jack? Talk about rotation. Are you rotating? Or is
well,
this
you know what?
There's undecided.
There's a great we're gonna buy a house for sure.
Okay,
I think
so just to clarify,
apes to a house, real estate. Yeah, from clicks to bricks
to a house, clicks to bricks.
One of the things I think is also informed this is like COVID relocation. We've been looking at real estate for a while, and like the markets that we've been interested in are just going parabolic. And it's like, man, I don't really, I'm not a analyst of real estate, but the trends that are in place to me don't feel like they're slowing down anytime soon. So it's like a rotation out of this thing that's up 17,000% into something that's maybe climbing, 30, 40, 50% a year right now, while keeping some exposure to that like moonshot investment, which is what these things are, right? I think that a lot of people talk about this in absolutes, but if say a 2008 level financial event happens, I don't see like money fleeing to profile pictures. That's not how I imagine it's going to play out.
Okay. Fair enough. And again,
not
I want
bonds.
to qualify what you're saying though. You're not degenerate. You're also not denigrating it. This is your personal.
My personal
opinion.
risk profile. Yeah.
There is a world where it could happen. There is a world where Bored Apes could be a safe haven asset. I actually could see. I could see that happening.
Yeah. No, I think
Continue.
like if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't have bought them in the first place. But like you get into a certain position where you're like, there's a different sacrifice I'm making where I'm going to bed every night and there's a little twinge going like, like the percentages are changing in a degree that I'm not comfortable with. And the other interesting thing that makes this so weird and difficult is that you're also trading into a currency that fluctuates at crazy rate too. Like one day your Bored Ape, like the price of it could remain the same, but the dollar value of it can fluctuate 50 grand a day because of, obviously the price fluctuations in Ethereum. And the other point, if you believe in Bored Apes and NFTs and, non-fungible tokens in general, exposure to Ethereum is a decent, layer zero bet on that ecosystem. So you can take some risk off the table whilst not losing complete exposure to the upside of the ecosystem. It's just a little shift in priorities, but we'll continue to monitor how this plays out over the course of the Not Investment
Well, what's
Advice
funny is
podcast.
as those shifts happen, you'll be discussing with your wife Celia, and it'll be like, "Hey, we just lost a Solarium this morning. Sorry, the 50 grand I made. Actually, you know what? The sunroom's back. We can afford a sunroom now. Look for this. Add sunroom to the filter."
Well, it's another, I just finished, not filing, but finished going through tax stuff for next year.
Bro.
Which is crazy when you're thinking about withdrawing, converting. Every event is every conversion into a currency is a taxable event. It's just a wild mess. And I'm
is
not
your accountant
really
laughing?
Yeah, he actually, you know what? He wasn't that shocked. Like the scenario I described to him before, because I'm not deep in DeFi protocols or yield farming or anything. It's like, hey, I bought this for this much and I sold it for that much, or he's like, sell that for a loss and blah 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 blah. You can bring the burden down doing it that way. It wasn't that crazy, but it is the managing of the different current, because obviously you don't pay tax in Ethereum, so it's just another mental game that you have to play. Where you're when do I withdraw the funds to pay my tax bill, and in what quantities you do it. The smartest way to do it would be every time you make a transaction, you just instantly convert and just vault that off, and you know exactly what the burden is. But when you're in the middle of these like hype cycles, you're just like, oh, I'm making money. I'll figure it out later, as long as I don't,
That sounds like a great SaaS service that I'm sure somebody's working on, where like you automatically remit to the IRS.
There's a few good ones. They're like, I would definitely recommend like having a professional review them, but there are some really good like SaaS tools that you just plug your wallet address into and it will bring everything up, and this is how many transactions you made this year. It'll make you feel sick, but you have to do it.
The worst is when you see the gas fee total, when you see how much you spend on gas fees. Yeah, I have a few of those saved too. And there's one where it automatically does it. And then there's another service where you can work with a professional that they, their team basically, and they can kind of audit it for you or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an accountant or if you're in that world right now, this is like green pastures, man, blue ocean.
I mean, if you're an accountant listening to this and you know about this stuff, if you're not buying Google ads on this search term, you're losing. Like I don't know how much it costs per click, average cost per click, but there's so many people looking for this and not many people providing that service, which is definitely worth testing out. So the last thing I was going to say on that, Jack, is really around how, you kind of shared already. What I heard from you is kind of like in traditional investing terms, it's like you have a percentage breakout of each part of your portfolio and you rebalance basically, right? In this world, you're not really balancing every other day because it moves so much, and you're not using a service like Wealthfront which does it for you itself. And so I guess, in your case, you're moving from one asset to another asset, and it seems like a smart thing to do for you, man.
I sold a bunch of Bored Apes back in May of last year and made basically nothing on them. So I've already come to terms with the unrealized.
I didn't realize you sold some in May.
Yeah, I bought a whole bunch of them and I was like, I just want to cover my cost basis. So maybe sold 2 or 3. And then now you look at it and it's like, oh, that's $250,000 I sold to save, $1,000. And you're just going to make mistakes like that. You can't dwell on it. You just got to keep going. And I think, like I said, the asset classes, like real estate volatility is like literally the, most docile thing you can imagine when you've been messing about with JPEGs, right? If there's a spectrum of like volatility in asset prices, one's at one end and one is at the other. So take some risk off the table. And I think knowing what your lifestyle goals are as well is very important. Like,
Jack, how unexcited are you for this mortgage?
Unexcited, pretty much sums it up.
You're talking about the excitement of NFT fluctuations. The most plain vanilla financial product you can be involved in.
Indeed. Yeah, I got to get Bilal to get me some of that DeFi yield to get the mortgage plugged in there, Bilal. Mortgage DAO. Set it up.
That's it. That's true. No, one thing I'm doing actually this year is I'm de-risking some stuff potentially. I haven't done much yet. I was waiting to the new year to sell anything and moving them to stable coins and earning like 20% on stuff.
I am loving experimental Bilal. I love this.
It's always been there. I just it's just there's more to experiment with, I guess now. But I think I've been saying that for a while and I haven't actually done it. I've just been waiting for a little while.
Yeah, maybe I think maybe a few episodes on that because I'm in the same boat there. This goes back to the first point we brought up with the Cobie post. It's like I think the 17,000% returns are like they come around now and again, right? But in a environment where that like playbook has been executed, to do it again seems unlikely or something that you probably shouldn't bet the farm on. So there's very like the metagame becomes like knowing yourself a little bit better as well, I think. And like the past, the reason I brought up that stat about the, people hold one Bored Ape and like a small amount of Ethereum in a wallet is like, there's been some like crazy tweets going around on Twitter, which I think inspired the Gainsey comment, which is like, I just gave my seed phrase away and someone took my Bored Ape and it's like 95% of my net worth, And that's just like, what? It's just the most egregious, like Trunk's face.
Wait, no, hold on.
Hold on. This one. He's like,
no, but because Jack, I wasn't fully comprehending what you said when you said 60% of the wallets with a Bored Ape had like one NFT in it. Now it's coming into the visual is that this is the majority of their net worth, at least in crypto.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess it's hard to know.
If you plot it on a timeline of people who bought in really early, and I was, the percentage of my net worth drastically changed as a function of getting into that thing early, right?
Yeah.
And that, like, I think even waiting this long, I remember your guys' reaction when I was showing you the offers like 2 months in. You're like, you're a maniac, right?
Just
for not taking that. Yeah. And I guess your own, just like, we've talked about this before as well. It's like, what is a life-changing amount of money for you? That's very different for different people based on, how much they earn, whether they have a job, whether they run a business, like what their current investment portfolio is like. And I think, to give some sobering, not investment advice, it's like you have to really like understand what you're trying to accomplish, I think. Or my test is always the sleep test, right? It's like, if I'm like thinking about it at night, I'm overexposed.
Morgan Housel right there is like can you go to sleep at night? That's the easiest heuristic.
Yeah, there's that 6529, writes these great threads on crypto in general, said if you can't survive 80% drawdown in crypto and like look at your family and be like, I'm good, then you're overexposed.
Okay.
I think that's something since the last time in 2017 when everything popped off and then dropped. Just speaking personally, I didn't really have any plan in place. I was just like, oh, this is only X amount of my percentage net worth. Even then, I don't even know if I was thinking about it like that. I was probably just thinking, I'm willing to put X amount. And I said, I won't touch it for a long time. But it wasn't like now it's a bigger percentage, right? So to be able to have some sort of exit plan, I think is something is actually very smart. Not to say you don't believe in something anymore. It's just you need to kind of create like targets. And this is my opinion, obviously, and I didn't make this up. This is like what smart investors normally do, is they'll say, okay, I'm going to take out like what you did. You're going to take out your initial stake is what a lot of people do. I know, Trung, when you interviewed Dracomiller, he gave, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, he was talking about when something drops by X percentage, they'll sell half. And like how they manage risk or something like that. I can't remember, but there was something along those lines. But more importantly, I think when you get like, crazy gains, which a lot of people have had in the last few years, like you kind of need to say like, all right, is this now 70% of my net worth? And if that's 70% of your net worth and you, like you said, you don't own a house and you need that money for something for you and your family, like you probably should think about taking some out. And it's okay. Like if you took profits, no one got poor from taking profits. So it's
quote that I brought up earlier from a successful gold individual in Vancouver is you get rich selling early, right? Just like
exactly.
Yeah, you get rich selling early.
Yeah, and I think that's like the anti-meme sometimes is like, that one part of it is like the social component of it where you feel really attached to this thing because you've paraded it around and it's got 10 million impressions on it with your name next to it. So it's like, oh, you sold it now. That's like an announcement that you don't announce selling other assets in the same way, right? There's no like visible difference in your persona. And I think that's like one of the reasons for its success. Obviously, like a huge reason for its success is like there's a greater connection than, coin X. Because if you're up 17,000% on a freaking Shiba coin or something, I would say 0.0001% of people will be hanging on.
Yeah.
But with this is credit to NFTs. There's thousands of people that are up to that degree, and they haven't gotten out. So there is something different here. Like, obviously these people have huge risk tolerance to begin with because they're messing about paying money for pictures. So it's not like indicative of like human psychology in general, but it is, if you compare it to activity in the normal crypto market, I think it would be very, very different.
Yeah, Jack, this actually kind of ties us nicely into the next segment we had planned, which is, you might have already started talking about it, which was why you think PFPs are the breakout NFT medium. I'm just going to read out one quote here, or tweet from DC Investor, if you follow him on Twitter. He said, PFPs are the GeoCities of NFT art, and I don't mean this in a bad way. And for any of our younger listeners who didn't grow up with GeoCities, it was like a platform where I used to have a GeoCities, and it was like a website. It was like WordPress before WordPress, or it was like you'd sign up and you'd create your website. It was like arsenalbox.geocities.com or something like that.
We got to get that Internet Archive running on that, Bilal.
I know, man. Bling, bling, king, Arsenal box.
As well, yeah. But yeah, I just thought that was a nice throwback. But Jack, you kind of started talking about it there.
Yeah, he nailed it. And I did a quote tweet on that tweet itself. Like, if GeoCities is like the bootstrapping of websites, or like people making their own websites, then I think it makes it tangible, right? It's this thing that turns like the information in your head into a page on a screen that you can share with other people. And I think what the profile picture trend is based on is this idea of like remote coordination. So you obviously it creates a network effect for the asset, but it also like helps you find people that like view the world in a similar way to you do very, very quickly. So like all of these people in community X, like when I first bought a CryptoPunk and changed my avatar to a CryptoPunk, my whole inbox just went ding, 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 ding. Like, oh, welcome. Made friends with people who have been in the ecosystem for a couple of years. And especially if like the project has a very specific intention, or it's I think CryptoPunks maybe gears towards like early adopters of crypto, just one, as a function of how old it is, and two, like how much it costs you to get in there for a good amount of time. So I think it's like this way to bootstrap community and then build stuff in a different way than like if I have Web3 in my bio, you're not saying like, oh, let me DM that person. It's like way more broad than this person has put skin in the game in the same asset that I own. And we can kind of coordinate. And if in some cases, like build upon the project that we're invested in together, like in some of these CCO projects, it's like you identify the people that think this thing is, more valuable than it's currently valued at, and you can work together to build stuff. So I think it's like a interesting bootstrapping layer, and it coasts off of the network effects of these massive platforms. Like without Twitter and Instagram, Twitter specifically, I don't think this market would exist. Like it definitely would be a thousandth of its size.
And Twitter has captured 0% of the value.
Yeah. And like, it's kind of Matt and Trung, maybe you can think of a couple of things here. Like that maybe there has to be some analogous examples, but it's like the profile picture is like, in order for you to use Twitter, 99% of people use a profile picture, and you've built a market that exists independently of that, but you're completely taking advantage of the distribution of this other platform. It's pretty fascinating.
Well, it's like probably like Farmville, right? For Facebook before it's like, oh, here is there's a social network with your friends and families. Okay, we're going to build a game onto this social network, which captures all the dynamics of friends and families and adds gamification. But then sure enough, Facebook's just like crushes it with the algo change, right? Totally crushed Zynga. But yeah, I think this is why the PFP NFT is so interesting. It's like like what Twitter's going to get rid of profile pictures. Right?
Exactly.
It's
yeah.
not going to happen.
This is not an API. This is not like something that you need permission to do. It's like you upload a freaking JPEG into the container and away you go.
Well, it's like how you think about what is the most valuable real estate in the digital world, right? It's like it's the top of Google search results. It's anything on Amazon's screen, right? It's like it's on the product page. Now it's a profile picture for Twitter is like literally the most valuable. And I think you nailed this. Like the least defensible part for the incumbent company is the profile picture of Twitter. Like, what are they going to do? Are they going to stop people from uploading, right? It's like at Amazon, you can't just put anything on the website. They control it, right? And the most valuable screen real estate, other than like the Google search box, is probably the checkout page for Amazon. Is like if you could put like how Affirm, how Affirm has that thing on on Amazon, like that's like, I mean, that's why they skyrocketed when they had the partnership, right? Checkout pages are probably the most valuable.
Coinbase Commerce.
Coinbase Commerce,
yeah. We're using that on Visualized Value.
But what do you think about the fact that it's about signaling too, though, right? Because in the same way we've talked about Rolex watches, or a handshake from afar, or something like that, like I've phrased in the past. Like there's an interesting thing. Like if you post a screenshot, I know like in our world, people do post screenshot of, like revenue and profit. I think Jack, you've even done that in like a building in Publix or way, but that doesn't come across as like, showing off. Like I've never seen it like that. It's always come across as, he's sharing. It's like quite useful for people. It's proving what he's doing is working. It's different to kind of like the Tai Lopez style, YouTube.
Check out these cars.
Look at his cars, and like where it feels fake, and you're not actually seeing what's happening. In a funny way, like if you own an actual CryptoPunk or Bored Ape, they cost it's like 50 Rolex watches by this point, right, or more. But it's not like, hey, look at my wealth. It's kind of like, hey, I'm into this kind of new club, and most people don't know what it is. So it still comes down to that underlying human need, whether you think that's a good or a bad thing, of signaling or just like, look at me, I'm different. Look how sick I am. I'm a G. But it's kind of in a playful way. So I think that's another reason why there aren't many other ways you can do that. If you just post a picture of it, that lasts for that one tweet or one post versus every single person who sees your profile.
It's pretty mad. There's someone posted this thing on Twitter recently. It's like the original NFT, which was like I Am Rich app. Have you seen that one before? Like,
the diamond, right? It's like you paid $10,000 for a diamond.
That's so
Genius.
Someone came up with that in what, 2008?
Right when the iPhone came out, it was like when the App Store was popping. There's like 2007, 2008. It's like, hey, this is like, here's the most expensive item in the App Store. Smart, right? It's like we're selling 10 of them. Like, here you go.
I also think that someone tweeted this as well. The first NFT was really when guys were buying girlfriends a star in the sky. Do you remember that? When they were naming stars in the sky?
An acre on the moon, or that one as well.
Wait, actually, Jack, you want to know what's funny is you actually have the equivalent of that, the $10,000 iPhone Diamond app. It's on your OpenSea Foundation right now. You have like the most expensive NFT listed, right? Yeah.
If anyone's listening, you're in the market for the most expensive NFT in the world.
What's that listed at right now?
I think it's like 42,000 Ethereum, which back then was 69. Back then was $69 million, but now it's probably 150 million.
Yeah. That was you priced it $1 above people, right? Just like how
no takers yet, though, boys.
Still sitting there.
How Kenny Griffin took on Constitution DAO, you just put $1 above.
Yeah.
All right, boys.
2022 is going to be a good year for NFTs. That's my prediction.
Yeah, it's already started heating up, right? Early on this year. Boys, I think we can. We've got a couple other things to cover. So unless you have anything else, we can move on to the last section on worst predictions. So Trung, I know you have been kind of studying this and making jokes about this for a little while.
Yeah.
But we wanted to do it's the new year, and it's a time where everyone says their best predictions, which 90% end up being completely wrong. So yeah, over to you, man. Like what I think you wanted to give us a few options or something.
Yeah, I'm going to nail some off and you guys tell me which is the worst one. We'll do them in sets of 3. Okay. Here we go. 1876. This is from a Western Union internal memo. The telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. All right. That's Western Union. So there's going to be a common theme that you guys are going to see. I want you guys to tell me what the common theme is.
Okay.
So Western Union said that.
Pop quiz section we got going.
Yeah,
Go
here we go. All right. So next one we have is a mathematician. He goes, flight by a machine heavier than air is unpractical and insignificant. Airplanes will never take off. And then, here we go. 1903, the president of Michigan Savings Bank told Henry Ford, the horse is here to stay, but the automobile is only a novelty. All right. Of those three, which one is the most jarring to you guys?
So wait, you said horse, car, airplane, and what was the first one?
The telephone.
That's a hard one.
That's a hard one, right? I mean, these are like prominent individuals. These are like some of the most notable people in their field. I mean, if we're talking about meta stories, the meta story is here. Predictions are hard, man. It's just like things that people see, you just never really know what's coming on. But the theme that I wanted to bring out was basically like the people saying this is totally against their incentives for that thing to succeed. But the Western Union guy is like, yeah, phones will never work because we run telegraphs. Like that's the way we communicate.
So what was the most recent one you said, Trung?
It was the car one. I got like 10 more, but those were like the ones.
I would say just because they're all terrible. They're all 10 out of 10 terrible. But I will say probably I'll just say the most recent one because the earlier you go in time, the more likely you are to not believe there's going to be that sort of big change. So I'd probably say that, but
go
kind of understandable. If you said to me now, everyone's going to have like self-driving cars in 10 years or whatever it is, most people still wouldn't believe that, and we probably will. So
I just
Jack,
think
what about you, man?
Yeah, Jack, what are your thoughts?
Do you want to say the three again? It was between horses and cars.
Yeah. The Western Union said the telephone will never work. A prominent mathematician said the airplane will never fly. And then a big bank executive told Henry Ford that horses are here to stay.
And we're saying that's the worst. Which one's the worst?
Yeah, which one's the worst prediction? I mean, they're all terrible.
Yeah, I would say that like the telephone one, you can kind of forgive them for that because it's like to Bilal's point, it's like that is like true magic to someone who just be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But I think there's probably evidence for like engines by the time horses were around, right? There was there were mechanical devices. So I would say I'll probably side with Bilal on that.
You know what? Actually, I think you guys actually brought up a great point about the telephone one also is like that Western Union guy probably had the understanding of network effects, right? He's like, well, if two people have telephones, like this thing is going to be useless.
Yeah.
And he's like, if this isn't like a popular mass market thing, well, the interesting about the horse one, I'll add this point here. I know we're running out of steam a bit. Is the problem with horses is actually huge. If you guys Google what the cities look like when horses were around, there were like cesspools of horse dung everywhere, and like it was like dangerous to live in those cities. Right? It's like very unhealthy, which is why if you go to a lot of old European cities, they have very narrow roads, and it's because they don't want freaking horses chopping around, dropping dung everywhere, because it's very dangerous to live in environments where there's dung everywhere, right? Like horse dung. I don't know.
There's
if that's
a bit on Silicon Valley about this. Have you watched that?
Yeah.
Where he's talking about it's great. I was going to say the Paul Krugman fax machine. The internet is going to be no more significant than a fax machine.
Well, that's actually, I mean, that's probably
astoundingly bad, I think.
So,
especially from a Nobel or whatever, like he's like with the Nobel economist. I don't know if the Nobel gives economics, but it's the equivalent.
And then, Trung, I think you wrote about this, and sorry if I'm skipping ahead, but I don't know if this was on your list, but Steve Ballmer, he talked about that when the iPhone came out, it was too expensive, I think he said, and it doesn't have a keyboard.
Yeah, that's definitely the most famous in the last. I mean, people love to dunk on it. Well, next week we should actually talk about the iPhone because it'll be the 15th anniversary of the unveiling of the iPhone.
That's crazy.
I did write. It's insane. It doesn't. Can you believe it only came out 15 years ago? 15 years ago.
I don't know if that's a long time or not a long time.
I can't tell.
I can't even figure it out. It feels like maybe a long time. It's like
I was gonna say it almost feels. It feels like it's just happened overnight. We just got
like
so
the
used
wave?
to it.
Yeah, like the mobile. Yeah, that's true.
And
right?
15 years ago feels like way into Web 1, 2, since we talk about Web 3 all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right?
You're like, oh, 15. That's like, because so much has changed. Like 15 years ago, there was no Uber, there was no Airbnb, like the stuff we're all used to using. So in a way, it almost feels kind of like a long time as well.
What was your first phone? Like, what were the capabilities of your first mobile phone? Mine was like a one-line display, LED. That's it.
I had a Nokia. I had one of those Nokia
as
keyboard
well.
ones.
I think I had a 3210.
Nice. Yeah. I definitely had one
Snake.
at one point.
Champion is Snake. And then when you become a little bit more gangster, you get like the 8850, the smaller ones, 8210. It was one with the titanium. It shot out. That was kind of hard to get. And then you could go online and get like what was it called? The ringtones, and you type in. Do you remember that? You type in stuff.
To like compose them yourself. Yeah.
Ringtones used to be $1 billion business, like a multi-billion-dollar business. Incredible.
You get a little Solid Crew remix going with Punjabi MC. That was mine for several years.
I think what's interesting about that is like maybe there's some interesting analogy to NFTs in there, where it's like technology, like deflationary, like it's price deflationary over time. It's like this market just makes no sense in that context.
Well, they're bringing scarcity into the digital realm, right? That's the entire point.
Yeah, it's just like the way that those technologies have reached like true critical mass have been through price deflation is my point.
Bilal, let me address the Steve Ballmer thing super quickly.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So yesterday, a lot of listeners, I'm guessing, had probably read or saw, I put a thread up about BlackBerry versus iPhone. The reason I brought it up is because this will come out on the 6th or 7th of January. But on January
just a couple
4,
days.
So a couple days. So on January 4, BlackBerry is going to stop supporting text, cell, and voice on all their legacy devices. Apparently, people are still using BlackBerries. So BlackBerry stopped manufacturing phones in 2016. But the whole thrust of the thread I wrote it because of the news that was coming out. They're stopping support was like, at the time, no one actually could have really predicted what happened with Apple. It's like all the tech media was like, this thing's going to fail. They agreed with Steve Ballmer. It's like $500 for a phone, like subsidized by AT&T. It's insane. And remember, iPhone 1 wasn't that good. It's like the internet. Did you guys ever have the first iPhone? Like it wasn't that great.
I don't think I did. I think I had a BlackBerry Bold back then.
Yeah, the Bold, right? Dude, Bilal, you had a BlackBerry. How sick was the BlackBerry, to be honest? For the time,
incredible. You just be BBMing.
I miss it now. I still miss it now.
You still miss it, right?
18-year-old, yeah.
Well, dude, they're talking about. I'll run through like the three big things, the mistakes they made was number one, they weren't consumer focused, right? It's like, so BlackBerry was so popular with corporate and government execs because of security and email, and like Bilal BBMing some shorties. That's super popular. BBM was so popular amongst the young crowd, like that was their into the consumer market, but they locked it to the BlackBerry. And then we saw in 2014 with WhatsApp, $19 billion acquisition by Facebook, a cross-platform messaging service would have been massive. And BlackBerry just like, no, it has to stay with our phone. Whatever, fair enough. They prioritize security. But somebody brought up such an amazing point. They sent it to me. I just added to the thread. At this point, I guess nobody has probably read or maybe followed up on it. They go, the main reason that BlackBerry failed was not these kind of micro decisions they made, not like, hey, they didn't go consumer, their software wasn't great, they had a really bad app store, or they kept the keyboard. Those weren't the reasons. The real reason was the big macro shift, and goes back to what Jack was talking about from the beginning, the meta narrative. The meta game that was being traded by Apple was this, that the device you held in your pocket would be a computer. And no one would make a better portable computer than Apple, right? They've been doing it for, at that point, 3+ decades. And it's much easier for a computer software first company, which is what Apple is, software and hardware, to make a general computing device, which you hold in your hand that happens to have a phone service, than it is for BlackBerry, which is a phone company, to make a general computing device. And that would be the meta trade. And there you go. I think that sums up and wraps up our conversation, beautiful, right? Beautiful. It's like, at the end of the day, and who else succeeded with smartphones? Android. They own 80% of the smartphone market. Guess what? They're a software first company. They understand general computing. So at the end of the day, when you think about it at that meta frame, like BlackBerry was toast, because even these small micro decisions it could have made, the wave was coming. And obviously Steve Jobs saw it, right?
Trung, I think being the resident historian here, I think that what you just said there, if we apply it to kind of forward looking as well, is something that we all kind of think about when we're looking at, companies, we're looking at startups, we're looking at crypto, whatever. That's something I always look at is like, who are these people and do they have a track record of creating stuff that is forward thinking? And it sounds obvious now in hindsight, like, Apple technologists versus like a enterprise focused company or whatever. But I guess that the big shift is also some technology companies also dwindle and like fall into the background. Like Microsoft for a while were the kings for a long time. Then Google came around, started taking over some of their share, even in, even when like Google Apps came around. I know Office is still dominant in their world, but there was like for a long time where on the consumer side, Microsoft just wasn't really getting any hits apart from Xbox, I guess. And, but I guess the question is, are there examples of traditional companies, in air quotes, that kind of reinvent themselves as real technology companies? Can you think of any examples?
Well, you were talking about Microsoft. To go back to Jack's earlier point, Jack, you asked, what is a comparable example of a company growing on top of somebody else's platform? I think Bilal actually just brought up number one. Google grew inside of Internet Explorer. So they basically,
that's a good point.
Internet Explorer was like 80 to 90% of the browser market. Google's like, we're not taking Microsoft on their turf. We're going to use the Internet Explorer. That's essentially what happened, right?
Momentum. Yeah.
So that might be the best example. I mean, it has to be. That's a $2 trillion company that basically grew inside of started in Internet Explorer. So there you go.
And that's a great point because, go on.
Nah, you finish your thought. Mine's way out.
No, I was going to say, I guess it's, because back then most people, I remember when Google launched Chrome, I remember they would go and interview people on the street and be like, do you know what a web browser is? And people are like, what are you talking about? And then they're like, oh, that little E thing. And then when I was there, they had these massive TV campaigns that were trying to educate people essentially what a browser is and why you need to care, security, speed, etc. It's just crazy now. We're so used to.
But now Chrome owns 70% of the market, right?
It's mad.
It's genius.
And I remember, I used to use Firefox back then.
Yeah, same.
In between,
and Opera. Well, let me answer your question. Who actually made a good pivot? You mentioned it. It's the company that you made the example of, Microsoft. They completely pivoted from a Windows-first company, which is a very vertical way of thinking about your business. Is like, if you don't support Windows, we're not going to play with you. To like, no, we're going cloud first, which means we will play with everyone. Is like, that is, I mean, from a market cap ad value, that was it. That was probably the
killers.
Pivot. Yeah. Because like Apple's always been consumer computing. So like iPhone is just a continuation of their iMacs to the MacBooks to the iPod to the Nano. But Microsoft did a full pivot from like a vertical focused company to like a totally horizontal. Anyone can play with us. I think that's got to be the best one.
Trung, and just to add to what you were saying, my original question was also kind of focused on like traditional companies. And I don't know if we would count Microsoft traditional because they were around from way before, but they were still technology. So definitely still a great point. But I was thinking of kind of forward looking. If we did a whole episode on Square, Coinbase, and Stripe winning in their markets, if you compare that to Visa, MasterCard, banks, traditional banks, like, do we have any faith in any of them reinventing themselves to be able to become, technology savvy enough to like win? You know what I mean?
I think dude, I think, anybody listen to the previous All In podcast, Chamath predicted that the biggest losers of 2022 would be Visa and MasterCard. And I think he answered your question exactly, Bilal. He's saying these companies are not incentivized to make the pivot that you're suggesting. Visa and MasterCard are $1 trillion market cap combined almost, based on a 3% rip on an old financial system they built. That's just free money, man. That's the highest margin dollar on the S&P 500. I think their operating margins are like 60, 70%. They're not giving that up to go to crypto. But crypto is going to be shoved down their throats for that reason.
And then the other thing is, even for technology companies, I think another trend I see is the Web 1 dominant companies often aren't the ones who survive for the next phase. You get the Snapchats, you get the Instagrams pop up. And the question now is, will big tech essentially embrace this new wave, if it is the big wave that we all think it might be? Because just speaking to people there's a lot of people who are like interested, but it's just so slow moving by this point. You're going to convince 100,000 people or more than that, who are employees there, to like know what this is. So when Facebook becomes Meta, half the people I know there are like, what the hell are they doing? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
That's why the Meta argument, actually, if using your frame, is like, if you were to bet on one of these companies to figure out, if you're betting from a philosophical,
like they're actually focused on it point of view.
It's Meta, right? It's because it's still founder led. Zuck controls the company, and he literally renamed the company to Meta. It's very clear what he wants. But if I'm betting on pure technology ability, I believe it's Apple, because if AR is the future, Apple, they've shipped 2 billion iPhones. They know how to do hardware, right? And they know how to do it so well. And if hardware and you're going to be wearing glasses on your face, like you're not going to outdo Apple. But
I guess my only point on that, Trung, is that maybe it's the company that doesn't really exist today, and like those guys are going to play their part. Yeah. But there's probably, I would probably bet on that on like a 20-year time horizon, but who the hell knows? All right, boys, I think that was a great way to wrap it up. Anything else on the BlackBerry side? That was a cool little fun fact fan.
For you guys hopping on BBC tonight, I got reached out by somebody on BBC.
The boys.
Yeah, from your. Well, you guys hit me up. BBC used to mean something. Probably means a lot less now. But
no, it's still BBC. It's still BBC.
An institution, man. Bilal, you can watch that with a cup of tea tonight.
I'm watching it right now, mate. It's on the TV. A cup of tea.
What time are you going on, Trung?
I'll be on. Damn, you guys are East Coast. It's gonna be late. I'll be on 12:20 Eastern, so 9:20 Pacific time. BBC World Services. We'll get a clip for the listeners. I'll get it. I had to say yes, man. To Jack's point, it's an institution. I gotta, man. Forget CNBC. Forget Bloomberg, which I've both been in. Forget Atlantic, which I've been in. BBC, guys, this is it. I've made it. This is it. I'm retiring.
This is the one. Yeah, that's amazing, man. All right, boys. I know we've been going on for a little while now, so thanks for listening all the way here. If you did, let us know. And we've got some big stuff planned for you guys. We've just been coming off the holiday break, so we're getting back into the swing of things. But every week now we'll be back to it. We're figuring out the schedule, just a heads up. So this will probably start being, we'll probably be publishing these every Thursday or Friday, but we'll probably be doing Thursdays for now. We'll obviously let you guys know if any of that changes. We're trying to get these out to you with faster turnaround time, something we've been working on for a little while as well. So everything will be nice and fresh. And we've got a lot more coming in the coming weeks. So make sure you're in the Telegram group. You can click the link in the description below. And make sure you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. And just do us a favor and click the little like button below and drop a comment. Let us know what you think of this. And we'll see you in the next one.